Hey, listeners, welcome back to yet another episode of Coffee Cables and Curveballs. We're your host, George and Rich, and our summer producer, Erwin's here as well. Go ahead, do you fellas.
Hey, listeners. Welcome back. This is a very special edition today. We're going to close out our first season recording with a very special guest from the West Coast. Got Erwin here on the other side of the table, a.k.a. the other side of the glass.
That's fair.
How we doing, Erwin?
What's going on, listeners?
And George, kick it back to you to introduce our host. Introduce our host? Oh, I guess he could be our host.
Yeah,
Introduce our guest.
See, it can happen to anybody, not just me. We have a very, very special guest with us today, and let's let our guests introduce themselves their way, shall we? So go ahead, Joe. Do you?
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me on. I get to be a closer. I'm the season finale.
You are.
That is amazing. And the fact that you actually are organized enough to have seasons is already a step ahead of me. I'm 200 and some episodes into my podcast, and I still haven't got any clue as to how to actually organize anything. Oh, but I'm Joe Way. I serve at a day job as the Director of Learning Environments at the University of Southern California. We oversee about the design installation support for about 500 AV-enabled spaces across the enterprise. And as well, I serve as the chair of the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance and co-founder, HETMA. And then I do own and serve as CEO and editor-in-chief of Higher Ed AV Digital Magazine.
Well, sounds like your full day's job is really from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, you're not busy at all, are you, Joe?
No, I just delegate so that I can drink coffee. Good coffee. You got the coffee.
Let's talk about that.
I was going to kick it off with that. You were the first guest to actually send us coffee. So thank you for that. George just brewed it in the K Cup Keurig next door, in the office.
Shout out to Bodhi Leaf. This is a fantastic brew. It's not a full dark, but it's a darker roast. Yeah. Very aromatic. We grinded it up in the office here, and the entire office smells like this amazing coffee.
Yep.
And Rich and I brewed ourselves a cup, and I'm probably going to have another one right after this.
Yes, me too. I didn't put anything in it, and usually I just put a little splash of milk, but it is delicious as is. I will tell you, it's smooth, and the smell was intoxicating.
Yeah.
So thank you, Joe.
Thank you for the coffee.
Of course.
5-star
Of course.
review.
I can't come on something that's Cable's coffee.
I know.
And curveballs and not get you coffee, right?
I feel like we have all of our guests going forward. That has to be a requirement.
They have
right?
to.
Joe's setting the bar high.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing, Dunkin' Cup of Joe for every episode leading up to this. So now we just can't look back anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the game.
All right, let's get started with the show today. First of all, Joe, you introduced yourself as the director at USC of Learning Environments and HETMA and Higher Ed AV and all this stuff, and we all know who Joe Way is and all these brands that are associated with you. But why don't you tell us? I'm curious to know how this Joe Way came about to be. What is that rich AV history there that led up to this Joe Way?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I can take up the whole rest of the show just in doing this. So I'll give you the high level points, and then you can go into any other ones. We can go down any tangent or curveball you would like from that point.
Well done.
But yeah, so I actually got my start in the industry. It just like every other AV person is a failed musician. And actually went to USC. So USC is my alma mater. I went for recording engineering originally, because I had done some recording things while I was in high school here, both for Geffen Records and Island Records. And so anyway, we can go into that further. But anyway, went to USC. And realized that I did not like the program very much, and so I became a philosophy major. Because why not? And then what do you do with a philosophy degree? You go in the entertainment industry. That's exactly what you do with a philosophy degree. And so no matter how hard I tried to get away from the entertainment industry, it's what I got my career in. I owned a production company for many years. I worked in live television, music, festival, you name it. Owned a couple of nightclubs. There's like everybody in Hollywood in the industry. You do whatever your next contract is. Built a business and had that for a number of years until it was acquired in 2008 So I had retired then in 2008 for a few years until I was at my church and they needed a tech director, and I started doing tech directing stuff for my church in 2011. Did that for a few years, but there and then another large mega church here, served as tech director there until Cal Baptist University said, hey, we need somebody to come in and help us standardize because we've grown so much. And the person in charge there was a member of the church. That's kind of who he knew who I was. I had never worked in higher ed. In fact, I'd never worked in any commercial integration side, which is kind of where I see higher ed fitting, more on the commercial integration side. I know we have live events and things like that. And was brought in to help Cal Baptist, standardize across the enterprise, figure out, where they were going to go. And I totally fell in love with higher ed while I was there. And then, so that was 26. That can't be. I don't know. Mine was around 2016-ish. I don't know. And then when my alma mater came calling in 2019 saying, hey, we need you to, can you do what you just did here? And that's how I got there, got to USC. And at that same time, right, a little before I did the transition, I recognized that there was really a need for our voice to be heard a little bit more. I do treat things like the business side. I've always came up being a business owner. That's how I've always looked at things, much less on the tech side and much more on the business and kind of, organizational leadership and management side. And I really saw that was lacking in our industry, and our vertical a lot. And why a lot of times we weren't being taken seriously, I think, by the rest of the industry. So that's kind of why BC and I founded HETMA, to kind of serve that side, because there are amazing, great other, organizations like ETC, formerly CCMC, and all that, right? But really to handle it, take it from like a business point of view, right? And that's kind of where I looked at. And then the podcast came about, I guess, a little bit before HETMA. And it was really just, it was interesting. It came about because I had spent my entire career again in live events. I didn't know anybody at all in higher ed, nor in the commercial integration side. And so I thought, well, I remember going to one InfoComm after going to Cal Baptist, and like going to education track and like sitting there and going, I know nobody in this room. And it was weird because I could go to the live events track and probably, do a little fist bump with 80 different people that I hadn't seen in years, right? So it's like, how is this the same conference? And I have no idea who these people are. Yeah. And so that's why I started the podcast, just to kind of thought, hey, if I interview one person a week in 50 weeks or a year, I'll know 50 people, right? And that's kind of how we got to, I don't know. I think I just talked for 4 minutes and said nothing. So
no, you said a lot. You said a lot. It's actually funny. And I do want to get back to what you mentioned about sitting in a class at InfoComm for a particular course. I'm going to get back to that in a little bit, and I'm sure you know where I'm going to get back to. But, it's funny because both Rich and I, we're both PACE alums. Erwin is a PACE alum, and somehow we find our way back to our institution. And I think this is true for our industry in general. That our folks find our way back to our alma mater one way or the other. But, in your travels, in your last, several years of doing this, just a very broad question. Where do you see our vertical as it compares to corporate, let's say, not even now, because we're just getting there, we're getting started, but the next 5 years,
Yeah, I think it's only going to get stronger. More is going to come of it. I need to turn off my sounds, my computer. All right, there we go. I don't know if you're picking up the computer sounds on the other end, but
no, I can't hear anything. We're good.
Okay, great. So this is talking about computer sounds is the quality content people come to podcasts to listen for. But yeah, so where I think it's going in the next 5 years is just growing stronger. In the last episode, Hired AV, I interviewed Dave Labuscus, the CEO of Avixa. And, one of the questions I asked him, I said, the growth of the end user, quote unquote end user, right? And this, so far, 38% of the registrants for InfoComm categorize themselves as end users. Almost half, 40% or so, select the education box for their vertical. That translates to a lot of people. Okay. That means that probably 3,000-ish to 4,000 attendees will say they work in the education vertical.
Exactly,
right. Now translate that to, what it looks. We know that we account for around $30-some billion in annual spend every year, right? Just in the United States, somewhere close to 180 billion globally. Well, that's a big amount, right? That's kind of justifies as to why we get so much attention now that we didn't always get. And I think that growth is only going to continue more, right? We're going to see that the industry take a move to more in-house integration. Right. I think it's already happening. You're seeing companies, the Apples and the, even government and a lot of these other companies saying, hey, we're going to build our own in-house teams. So I think that really helps us because the move is going to self-support. In fact, technology is moving to self-configuration. We kind of went through this where, configure and then configure was bad. So now we had to program. Now we're going back to configure and we're going back to self-configuration, AI being pulled into things. I think we're going to get a lot of high-level ability to put high-quality stuff in and very, very easy, kind of low cost of entry and low point, even cost both in dollars, but also in effort. And I think that only helps us. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely think our vertical is positioned very well if we take advantage of it and we keep ourselves acting like professionals. And this was the one thing I've always said, I know we want to have our voice heard and we want to be respected at the table, but until we actually act like the rest of the integrators and the rest of the business community in the AV industry, we don't deserve it. Right. So, but when we do that, then we should have that equal shot at the table. And I think the industry is now open to that. And I've seen that's the biggest change in the last 5 years.
I agree. We are quite siloed. That is my biggest, not issue, but biggest concern with our industry, where we are introverts for the most part, and we like to keep to ourselves. The lesson I learned was if you don't hear, no news is good news, right? So it's like, that's the lesson I've learned in my time in this industry, and it's starting to feel like that's not fair. That's not fair to all of us that do our work, and we should be highlighted for the things that we do, and people should know what we're doing, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I completely agree with you, and kudos to you and others in our field that are doing the same to highlight such all our accolades and so on and so forth.
Well, speaking of, I wanted to jump in because this made me think, Joe, we saw this hologram lab that you have out there at USC on Zoom.
Hologram, you say?
George and I went to New York City this week and saw it in person now. George is talking about future 5 years. Tell us about this lab. I mean, we tell our listeners a little bit about this lab and how it came about and all the cool things that you're doing, because our mind was blown by it when you showed it to us at the ETC conference via Zoom. And then once we saw it in person, I think our mind was blown again.
Yeah, isn't it cool? Like I said, I think I said before we hit record, it's the coolest party favor ever.
Yes.
And expensive party favor, but fun. So it's interesting. It's part of what started out as our esports arena, right? But as we started to build our esports, one of the things that we recognized, our philosophy at USC is that everything we do has to be the benefit of every single student, right? Not just any one particular niche. And I think a lot of esports that we see focuses on the gamer, rightfully so. I mean, it's about gaming, right? But we actually wanted to take it a step further and look into like what is incorporated, not just for gamers, but the business of esports. And could we develop our space around that and how many places that could touch? So hence, when we have, we started with the games, the computer stations, but then recognized really quickly, like, what about broadcast? Film production. We have a great film school here. We have the #1 game design program in the country. So could we build a space where they could actually design their games, do 3D modeling, actually have a full professional broadcasting studio? be able to create, have areas where they could create the lower thirds and graphics and all of that stuff, and then be able to put it, and kind of step that further. What direction is technology moving in? It's moving into blockchain. It's moving into NFTs. It's moving into digital creation. It's moving into.
Are you hinting at the metaverse?
It's going to the metaverse, and it is. People can hate me, but it's there, and in fact, it is. And people don't understand it right. That's why they don't like it. But we are moving into virtual worlds, and hence the hologram machine. As I'm walking through CinemaCon with Tim Albright, and we're walking down the hallway, and we see this box, and I literally walk in. I'm like, I want one of those. I don't even know what it costs. Just get me one and get it to my campus. Because again, it was what can we do with it, both for creation, content creation, but also marketing. I mean, you put, the head football coach on there to welcome people into the space, or the president of the university. Also, could we then have somebody like there in New York? Could we have a faculty member from NYU or something be able to, kind of bring themselves in and teach in that space? The whole space is a collaborative area and educational space as well. So that's where it kind of grew into. And it was just one of those, like, every time we had an idea, it was like, oh, but now what about this student? Well, now what about this type of person? So we could really get that full collaboration together, in one kind of easy spot. And hence I ended up with a fun little hologram machine.
George and I looked really good together in the hologram machines.
Together.
I feel like that would have been we could teach our AV program, to students at USC, other colleges
absolutely.
that have this, so I was really impressed with it.
And it's actually, to take that to the next level, just like you said, it's, this is a good segue to get into our AV program, what Joe thinks about it. But, when the program is eventually built out, and when there is a major degree, or dare I say a graduate program, dare I say a doctorate. That's probably too far-fetched, but, at least let's stick with a master's program, right? So, that opportunity to say, hey, Joe, would you like to teach a course at Pace for project management, right? Or Joe, can you be a guest speaker? It changes the dynamics of the classroom. You know what I mean? Our traditional, and I know, there's still academia split with the whole, my class should be a lecture because I can't teach it any other way. But let's be honest, like, we're moving into the experiential world. We're moving away from. Do you really think students want to look at the back of this head for 2 hours on writing on a whiteboard? I hope not. You know what I mean? I didn't enjoy it as a student. I don't think today's students enjoy that. So, to that end, with the experiential learning and wherever we're headed, this is a great start to lead into, dare I say, metaverse, right?
I think you are absolutely right.
My question to you is, how does education, how long ways are we from education adopting metaverse entirely? And what do you, in your mind, what do you think that'll be? What form or what shape would that be?
Yeah. So the fact is, it's actually already here. Okay. It already exists. There are some schools doing it very well. There are some schools like ours that are currently working on putting programs together. In fact, the best way, and I know metaverse, it's a buzzword, and then people like things or don't like things, and usually tech people dislike things first, and then they like it. It's our natural progression to say, no, I hate it, without even understanding it, but it's what we do. And yet there are some, when you look at it, the idea of the metaverse really is that's a buzzword for Web3, right? A more interaction, a web that knows more than you, that can help cater you what it is to you. And that's where I look at this opportunity. I really, for me, where there's metaverse, like, do I need it at USC? We're a traditional brick and mortar campus. No, I really don't, right? We would be fine without it. But what about places, third world countries, that have a hard time with education? And this is one of the things that the pandemic did. It exposed all of those things where traditional brick and mortar were hindrances to good education, right? Because not everybody had the resources. But once you could put people online, and once you could now have catered education to the customer who is there. Sorry, I call students customers. The customer who is there, and be able to teach in the way they can understand it from a faculty member who's an expert in that thing, and you can bring that to them, why wouldn't the next step be to create a collaborative environment that's more Zoom on steroids than just staring at boxes, but now create an environment where everybody can come together and learn? That becomes a great equalizer for the inequities that we've found around the globe. So the ones who can really get the most out of it, which is interesting because those are the countries that are actually doing the most research onto it, are those that don't have the means for traditional brick and mortar education.
Right.
We have a tendency to look down upon it because we don't have the need for it. We've learned and adopted, but the next generation has been living in virtual worlds, right? The fact is the incoming freshman this next year has never lived in a world that didn't have an iPhone.
Correct.
Never. They can't picture what it's like, right?
Wild.
They are virtual natives. Right? Not digital natives. They are virtual natives. They've always lived on FaceTime and all this. And that's why, as we all know, when the pandemic came, it wasn't the students who had a hard time adopting to online. It was the faculty that had the hard time. Right. And so, and that's only going to become more as the students have developed their lives digitally. They are, you could say, there was a study, and I wish I could find it again. It was one of those random things I read, where you see it on your feed and you read it, and you wish you can go back, but your feed has updated and you'll never find it. But there was a study that said that students identify, like this next generation, identifies with their social media handle name more than they identify with their own name.
Wow.
I know. Think about that for a minute, right? That the identity they create in a handle is the identity that they've shaped themselves toward.
Also, a lifetime ago when we used to ask someone out on a date, it would be what's your number? I've witnessed in real life people saying, "What's your Instagram handle?"
Oh my goodness.
That's where we are, right? My 10-year-old lives in this fantasy world. What is it called? Minecraft, Fortnite. That's the expectation. So you said, where Pace is also a brick and mortar institution. You said, third, not necessarily, let's call it right. Third world countries that can't afford the brick and mortar, they're looking. But I know education, especially in the U.S., is all about traditions and all this kind of stuff. But isn't it time we started thinking outside the brick and mortar tradition as well?
Yeah, 100%. 100% think we should. And that's also why you're seeing a lot of the next tier schools. And I know because I'm come from an elite R1 where I'm at now. But we're not the ones that are really pushing this. It's the ones that have the 2,000 students, 3,000 students. There's an opportunity to grow, right? That are really pushing it. Look at esports. Right. It's not the big schools that are the top esports programs, right? And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity and where we need to be able to move and change. The next generation is going to. And the fact is, even kind of pulling it back to your 5-year, what we're seeing in 5 years. Remember, the next thing that's going to happen in 5 years is the next generation of teachers who came out, who are now in high school and college, who grew up in a virtual world. They're going to want to teach because they live in a virtual world. So we also have this sense of, we got to get away from, tenured professorships. We have to get away from.
That's a dangerous topic, though.
I know, but we have to. And we're moving that way. Everyone knows. The only reason people don't like it is because they know that we're moving away from it, and we should move away from it. And as the new faculty come in, you're going to see user adoption because they won't understand what it's like to learn or teach without technology.
Sure.
Right. So that will be the biggest move in the next 5 years as well. It's just the change of who the teacher is.
Personalities. I know Rich is itching to ask about the degree program, but I do want to say one thing. While the faculty had a hard time adopting during the pandemic, I do, credit where credit's due. They really did jump on that horse, and they really they really grabbed the bull by the horns, right? And they really did step up. And so kudos to them for that, because our classroom design, our base model, our standard level classroom design has changed drastically from what it was just 5 years ago. So, kudos to them for that.
Yeah. I was going to pivot to, obviously.
You said pivot, take a drink.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
to InfoComm.
That coffee's delicious, man.
It really is. Obviously, there's two big events coming up, right? InfoComm's in the very near future, and then we have the big annual ETC conference.
Hey.
In September at USC.
Hey.
I guess we just wanted to ask you, Joe, what's the biggest thing you're looking forward to as, someone that's gone to InfoComm many times and obviously does a lot of travel and so on. But what's the one thing you would say? I guess it's kind of cliche, but to somebody that's hasn't gone in a while or hasn't gone to InfoComm at all, what's your pearls of wisdom for that person?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to do shameless plug because this InfoComm is the very first time in the history of InfoComm that an end user has a booth on a show floor.
What?
Hey.
So, having a full 20 by 20 booth on the show floor is a first ever.
Oh, congratulations.
Excellent.
I know. I have a whole new respect for anyone who does trade show booths. Mm-hmm. It is the bane of my existence. I am going to get back at every manufacturer who's ever asked for a badge scan, because that's who I'm going to be all week. Can I scan your badge? Can I scan your badge? And then I'm going to send the email 3 days later. Thank you for stopping by the booth. It was a pleasure. Can I? And then, and then I'll send the 2 days later. In case you missed my first email, I'm pushing this up to, so I'm going to say, I gave a couple of answers. If you're in higher ed, then definitely stop by the booth. We're doing cocktail hours 3 to 5 each day. We have programming throughout, giving away swag stuff, but really come find your people. Right. That's the whole thing, regardless of whether you're a member or not, whatever. There's a place for us, a physical flag in the ground to say, this is a home for our people. Swing by, meet others, especially in our vertical. I know that, a lot of people come by and, or go if they're from schools and they don't know anyone. It's hard to connect. The same thing. Like even when I went to that very first education class at my first InfoComm while working in higher ed, it was still weird to introduce to people, right? And you didn't know, where do you fit in? And I know a lot of people go through that. And I'm naturally just an outgoing person. So I'll grab a beer and embarrass myself. It's what I do. But I know a lot of people aren't, right? Tech people, our image is that we're introverts and we hang out, and it's true by and large we are, right? And so come by, and find your people and just be okay just being there. Introduce yourself, and that's for higher ed. But let's just say in general, my feeling at a show, when you go to a show, is to have a plan, know what you want to accomplish, right? I did 168 shows last year. I think I've got 25, 20. I'm cutting down this year. I've only done 30 of them, 25 or so this year.
Oh my goodness.
I always go in with a plan of what I want to accomplish, right? And I'm doing different things than the average person. Maybe if you are coming and looking for, certain technology for something they're doing, or they want to learn a certain skill or whatever. But when you come in with that mindset, plan it, and know that that's what you're there for. Get it done, mark it off the list, but then save the rest of your time for for spontaneity. You never know when someone's going to invite you for a drink, or there's going to be, a meetup here, or an extra class you didn't know about, because when you're looking through the list of, 900 classes, they all just blur. But then when you're there and you hear someone else is going there, so kind of that two sides, allow it to be itself and take on its own identity. And then on the flip side, no, if you're there for a reason, which is what you're telling your boss, right, to get the funding, you're like, I need to go and learn how to do this, and I need to look at all 800 projector manufacturers, and okay, but accomplish that, right? There is something in your job as to why you're going, right? For me, it's always networking. I don't need technology. I know all the technology. It's all. I don't care. But I'm also, in a large metroplex areas, I have every manufacturer here. I have that. If you're somewhere that's in a small, a rural area, you probably don't have that. Maybe you want to take advantage of more show floor time because it might be your only opportunity to see new technologies, right? Just have that plan.
Yeah. While we're doing the shameless plug, I just want to put it out there. ETC, Educational Technology Collaborative, will also be hosting we're finalizing some logistics, but we will have a afternoon get together for members and non-members, just for the education vertical, so we can hang out and just kind of chill out. So look forward for information on that as well. So 168 shows last year. Damn, is that the most you've ever done?
Yeah. No, it was definitely a lot. And so the funny thing is, it started out at the beginning of the year last year, where Chris Neto and Tim Albright and I because we were like we had started this like counting our show numbers from the year before.
Competition.
And there was a little competition, and then at some point, like I just started pulling away, and it's a blessing. I mean, I am completely blessed and honored to, I want to say be the kind of unofficial figurehead of our industry, our vertical, sure. Right? I've been blessed to be able to speak and represent the things that both we're doing at USC, but also higher ed, right? When I go, I try to speak for the vertical. I know that there's a lot of differences, but it's been, it really has been a blessing to continue getting those invites and just to give our vertical a voice in so many different types of conferences. It's crazy. So yeah, it's that was last year. This year I've said I'm cutting down a bit, so some of the invites I've gotten either given to my staff or found other people to fill in for it. So.
Hey, feel free to send a few our way.
hey. You were in Dubai, so tell us, when you were not sandboarding or building jumping off the Burj Khalifa, what were you doing there?
I was.
I saw a tweet. I think I saw a tweet. You said, "Dubai, make me an offer I can't refuse."
Oh my gosh,
that good? Huh?
I loved Dubai. It was one of my. A lot of times I travel, especially when I go somewhere new. I try to, like my wife came out with me. We try to make a little bit of a vacation, especially it's when the conference is paying for me to go out there. Right, I'm picking up the hotel, my airfare, all that. Right, and the expenses and all that. So you want to take advantage of it, and now, and then of course the wife comes out. All I do is pay for her added airfare, right? And we got everything else. And we didn't really know what to expect. A lot of times when I travel, especially for we're gone for 10 days, by like day 5, you're like, I'm ready to go home. We kind of thought that might be the case, but the next thing we knew, we're like, wait, we leave in the morning. Like it was so great. It's awesome. So hard to explain. It's really like Vegas meets South Beach, Miami.
Oh wow!
Right, put those two together, and that's Dubai.
Wow.
And it was just great. Some great friends. Girish owns an integration company as part of PSNI. Went out, met his team. We had a great dinner. Got to golf one of the championship courses there, which was fantastic. And just the culture and the people, and it's so hard to explain, but it was fantastic. My whole responsibility was only speaking for 25 minutes. That was it.
That's awesome.
So and again, getting to share, they actually ended up having me speak for an entire hour, which was kind of nice. Again, shows our people care about our vertical, right? So that was pretty awesome, and it's great just seeing how other people do things around the world too.
Pivot.
Yeah.
So George alluded to this before. So I know you have an idea of what we're doing here, building here at Pace with this AV program, and how there's really no true there's no true the certifications are the CTS is the golden certificate. There's no academic degree. We've started building out a minor program which should be pretty much approved by this summer. Our end goal is obviously a major. From your perspective, we always like to ask other people's perspectives. What would your advice be to us, keeping in mind from somebody in the industry in higher ed, as far as how we build this program out and the logistics of it, and just any other pearls of wisdom you would have as we continue, because this is something we're like, oh cool, like we're the first institution to kind of have something like this. This is awesome, but we want to collaborate with other people. Like we're gonna reach out to you. We're gonna reach out to Donnie and down in UCF and all these other contacts that we have. But what would be your advice to us, and how can we collaborate with another university?
Yeah, no, good question. And I've thought about this too. First off, I mean, it's kudos to y'all for even just putting this together. And I think that my advice would be, remember to keep it holistic, right? Like, and not just teaching the technology. I mean, yeah, is there part of that? Absolutely. How to over under your cable rolls and do all those fun things, right? But remember, the technology changes, so you want to and the technology is actually kind of the easy part, right? And wherever someone goes into and what area that they're interested in is going to kind of define that, right? But there's so many different parts that make us make up our industry, whether it be from PR to business management to project management, to faculty training. And that's one of the things like on my staff here at USC. I always say I have the greatest staff there is. And it's right. So you can think you do.
I'll challenge that.
No, you're wrong. Because I do. Hey, I got 2 AV professionals of the year. I got 2, 40 under 40s. I got Messi in the 9. I got, I got 2 doctorates, two doctorates. About, I think it was like 7 masters. So, hey, I tell you, I think I got the best.
Sorry, Irv, I think we have the second best.
But here's the thing. The reason I actually say that is because when I built my team, again, I was blessed to come into USC where I got to build my staff from scratch. Right. Completely from scratch. So one thing I did is I put down all of the skills that would be needed. I needed people who could understand logistics and operations and project management and programming and cloud and network infrastructure, and people management and DEI and all these things, right? And marketing, all of those type, content design, all of the UX, right? And I started listing all of these things, customer service, whatever. And I think I had like 80 different things that I needed.
Right.
And so then rather than having a position going, okay, I need this one, I found a group of people that brought me all those skills. So I could find someone to go, I love this human being. This is a great person. And they also bring XYZ skills.
Right.
Okay. Mark them off. Found somebody else who had this great skill set and they knocked off 8 more of those things off the list. Right. And that's how we brought a diversity of talent to my team, not just in, physical diversity in the way we think of it as DEI, but diversity in the skill set that most people don't have. Like most people would wonder, like, why did I hire someone that was a PR major for an AV support team? Because we sell, everyone's sick of my case studies, right? But you know what case studies do? They help my budget keep coming, right? They tell our story. It helps me when I put my slide deck together, when I'm going to ask for money, that I've got that. I know how to tell the story of what we're doing. That's why Lex works for me, and she's amazing, right? That having that skill set, and most people are like, what do you mean you're hiring a PR person? Yeah, because that's part of our business, right?
So, sure.
Yeah, and that's, so now to finally come around to answer your question, it's that. Keep that in mind, build the whole student, build the whole idea, and let them then decide, hey, especially if it's starting as a minor, like if you're got a minor program, that means they also have a major. Right. So how could you show them that their major, whatever they're in, computer science or marketing, whatever, there's a place for you in the AV industry. And here's where that fits. Right. And that's a huge opportunity for us to now build out the base, not just people who can run a soundboard. Right. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the certificate programs, because people have tried it and have tried to start them. Right. They do exist, especially like in House of Worship and stuff. Right. They do exist, but they're always just about, here, be a good audio engineer. Well, a good audio engineer, it doesn't matter if you can't go fight for a budget and you can't get a sound right. So those are the types of things where I think that if I were building a program, I would really invest in.
Yeah, and I think actually that's actually great, because our partnership with the MCVA program is actually pretty awesome along those lines, because we have journalism majors, we have PR majors, we have filmmaking, you name it. And now that's a skill set that can definitely be married with AV, and, just a broader range, a wider umbrella, so to speak, when you're job hunting or whatever. So,
and then partnering with Crestron, everybody thinks Crestron, you have to do IT or AV or have some sort of technical. No, they have like PR, marketing, HR. Like we had Chris Fitzpatrick.
Do you speak much?
A couple episodes ago, and I don't think we talked a single moment of tech, and it was refreshing. Like, that's fine. We talked about careers, interviewing, networking,
mentorship,
all that good stuff, and it was mentorship. It was phenomenal, and again, like between our MCVA department being so experiential and having all these different hands-on majors and our the partnerships that we've established, that definitely makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, and we have to give a shout out to CTI and Atlas
CTI,
IED, Gina and George, and even Tim and them. They've been really just fantastic partners throughout this process. Chris Neto, I mean, all of you, Joe. You've also we've had so many conversations. I'm hitting you up when you're in Dubai, or are you gonna be in India next? Are you gonna be in my neck of the woods next?
Yeah, there's plans. There's plans. I see. This is the advantage. So, well, are you traveling as much? Well, I'm just being more selective. I'm going to places around, So, so that I've been to like 8 countries this year or something like that. So that's the plan. Just pick the far ones.
So, Joe, I saw on LinkedIn the other day. Tell us about your book that's coming out in July. So your second book is coming out.
My second book. So there's my first book is behind me. Awesome. You can buy it on Amazon. And yeah, so it actually came from from my speaking. Okay, so I say this to everybody all the time. Every time I speak, I say the same thing. It's the same slide deck. I just changed the title. Okay, I've been doing that for 2 years. Okay, the exact same slide deck, the exact same speech, and no one's figured it out yet. And I tell people that, like, literally, it's. But no, I do cater it to the audience, a little bit. But it's the same general story of kind of how as the world turns, how the education changed, and just some learning points that I have picked up going through the pandemic experience, right? And of course, the technology that we did at USC, which is no doubt and by far probably the single best technology installation in higher ed. And when you come and see it at ETC, you will see why. That I always joke that it actually is the one setup that does live up to the case studies, right? And especially when people walk on campus, they're like, "Oh, we had no clue." So you're gonna like it. But so the kind of a combination of talking about putting that bleeding edge technology in at something, where at one point I think we had 9 NDAs, active NDAs at one point, and working on putting that in there. Which I will tell people, don't be that stupid. Don't do that. Because that was a lot of points of failure that were possible. But nonetheless, so taking that along with the lessons we learned through the pandemic and seeing where the next generation is going, like we're talking about, that students are now content consumers. They expect technology and education to be delivered in a different way than the traditional way it was. So I'm taking that narrative, which is what I speak on everywhere I go, and I really want to just, before it becomes outdated, before it's, I kind of forget what to do, and I've done some recording, is like, I need to turn it into something and turn it into the book. And that really is the book. The book is taking that narrative and kind of going, okay, now what? What changed in technology? So now, ideally, the last chapter is, the call to action to now do something with it. What are you going to do with it? And to bring that either to your campus, or if you're an instructor, how do you change your pedagogy? What does that mean now that we understand the new way the world is? And that is the book. So, I took a bunch of recordings that I've had over the last, 2 years, ran them through some transcription, and there we go. Next thing you know, I've got the book, and all I got to do is go out and edit it and actually make it so you don't fall asleep.
Is it more than 100 pages? Because then it might be hard for me to read.
A lot of pictures. No, it is 200 200 pages. 200, but that goes quick. It's 200 pages. You can read that.
That's not bad at all. This was phenomenal, Joe. We usually, George, do you have anything else? Because I wanted to start getting some of the fun stuff that we usually do with our guests here. First, this is actually a new one, Joe. Since you are the first fellow bald guy to join us.
Hey. I think we would have at least someone else on, but 11 episodes in, you're the first.
So we always we do a bald joke, which I'm going to let George do. But we're actually adding a new segment here. We like to ask our guests who they believe would be their choice for the sexiest bald man alive. And you cannot choose George, myself, or you, of course.
Oh, I was going to first thing that came to mind was George.
Wow. Which is why we had to take me off the table.
The sexiest bald man alive. Oh my gosh. Now I'm Googling this. Bald men.
Fantastic.
Let's see.
There is one right answer for Rich and me. It's not for everybody, but for Rich and me.
Oh boy. All right, so here we okay. What? Yeah. So again, this is the quality content people come for, to have me Google things while we're recording. I guess. So here's a whole list: the best 20 bald actors of all time. And boy, it's quite the. So Telly Savalas was what came to my mind when you said it. But then you've got The Rock, and you got Bruce Willis and Sean Connery and Samuel Jackson. Right? Yeah. So
it's Brucey for us.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I'm going to go with Bruce Will. Yeah, I'm going to. You know what? And praying for him and his health and all that right now too. So yeah, definitely not Patrick Stewart. I cannot stand him. I hate Star Trek. Yeah. Well, there's a picture of him.
Google says so.
I guess so.
I know. If it's on Google,
it's on Google.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
George, you want to hit him up with the ball joke now?
Actually, I did not bring my laptop, so I'll let you do it again.
All right. These are very dad-esque jokes, Joe. So bear with us on these.
I mean, we love it.
We try to do a different one every time. What do diarrhea and baldness have in common?
Oh, Lordy. What?
They both run in your genes.
Damn.
If Sweet Lou was here, he would have fallen out of his chair.
I can't. Oh, my God. When I heard it, I was dying. I'm still. Oh, my God. That was great. Oh, my God. Sorry.
Damn.
Do you want to take streaming season, Georgie?
Yeah. All right. So, we talk about the other thing we do on the show is we talk about shows that we watch, streaming shows that we watch. I just finished watching. I forgot the name of the show. Mayor of Kingstown.
It was that good.
It was
that you forgot it.
No, I go between shows. I watch a couple of Indian shows with my wife, and then there's a couple of shows that I watch just because, and then there's one show that I'm like really into. So the names get mixed up. It's a really hard life I lead. But Mayor of Kingstown was the show that I'm really obsessed with right now. So what is a show that you're watching right now?
I don't watch a lot of television, so it's usually just it'll be sports if I do, but Ted Lasso for sure. All right, that's it. So for sure that one, and then I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I just watch HGTV. And I just put it on.
No reason to be embarrassed.
That's it, And
George is our resident gardener and home improvement guy.
And that's it. I love, we got properties around the Caribbean and stuff, so I love watching, renovation shows, especially like Renovation Island and things like that. So anything having to do with.
Yeah, I watch those shows too, Joe, and then I think I can fix a sink or, whatever it is. And every time I go downstairs and grab a tool, my wife's terrified.
Yeah.
It just reminds me to pay people. Like I get the ideas, and then I go find someone and pay them to do it.
Yeah, I get a text from George. He's like, "Hold on, I'm fixing my kitchen sink," and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna let you be on that."
7 Home Depot trips later.
Last but not least, we always, the day we record, we always pick out what day it is. National, gimmicky national. Like, there was 3 of them. I could 2 of them kind of went together. So
hit us with all 3. We'll pick one.
3? All right.
We'll pick one.
So one was National Paper Airplane Day. I thought that was like kind of like a classic.
Cute.
Yeah. The next 2 kind of went together. So it was National Carb Day. I thought it meant carbs like, pasta, bread. It was actually something to do with race cars, I guess.
Like a carburetor.
Like carburetors.
However, it was also Blueberry Cheesecake Day. Ooh. So I was going with the carb / blueberry cheesecake angle.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going with.
Let's
blueberry
go with
cheesecake.
Big fan of. Cheesecake in general is pretty good.
Yeah, so folks, go outside and get yourself a blueberry cheesecake.
Yeah. And from Paper Airplane has a few or 10
Yeah, I kind of like that too.
How far it goes.
I kind of like the paper plane too.
Yeah, cool. Those are both good. Now I feel like I have to make a paper airplane
and have a blueberry cheesecake.
Excellent. I think I have a
we got a question. We have a question from the audience
for you. So the travel bug you are, all the countries you visited, if you had to pick a place in the world to live, where would it be?
Costa Rica.
And why?
Because Costa Rica.
There was no hesitation.
Okay.
His answer was,
I have my favorite places on Earth, and my top 2 are definitely Earth. I don't say there's 3 or 4. So Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, definitely the Cayman Islands. You see, there's a theme there. And then I love London. Like, just absolutely love London. I can never get enough of it. Maybe because I did my PhD in England, so therefore I'm a little partial to it. But I do love that. I love places with history. Having gone, back to Japan a couple of times, I do love Japan, but I wouldn't want to live there. Like, there's places like same thing. I love Dubai. Was I looking at properties while I was there? Of course. And but then it's like, yeah, would I want to live there? No. Could I own an Airbnb there? Yeah. So, but I could, there may or may not be some retirement plans in Costa Rica already. So
nice.
All right. That's a great choice. That's
excellent.
I think we're supposed to go to Costa Rica as a guys trip, and that never happened.
Yeah, that was on the list at some point.
Oh.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And here's the thing about Costa Rica: for actually quite a small country, there are like 12 different climates too. So like you go to, we love like the Arenal volcano area, and you can go right down to Liberia from there, just right down the way, and you've got some surfing on the beach, and it's fantastic. It's a great, and it's cheap, it's dirt cheap.
Yeah.
So might have to make it back on the list.
Yeah, you know what I realized? We had we usually plug the Jimmer in every show.
Yeah.
And Joe made a reference of Sobe.
Yes.
And we did not make a Jimmer reference. So our good friend Jimmy, he's obsessed with South Beach. So we try to work him into every show.
He's also obsessed with carbs. So I don't know. Maybe
carbs,
we should have shouted him out there.
Yeah. We had a couple of opportunities to shout him out, and we dropped the ball on that one.
We did.
Usually, though, in South Beach, you don't see a lot of people walking around who ate a lot of carbs.
I guess Jim would be the exception to the rule.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Really look forward to seeing you at Infocom.
Yes, can't wait to meet you. Can't wait to meet you in person, Joe. I haven't met you in person yet, so I'm looking forward to that and see you in a couple weeks.
Likewise, this will be great. Yeah, a couple weeks.
Awesome.
Also, for our listeners, we're going to be broadcasting, hopefully live, depending on the internet, at the show, at the Starin booth, at the Starin booth, at the Hetma booth. We'll also be at the T1V booth. So come by and look, check out the Bald AV Guys T-shirt, a limited edition.
Hey!
You get a chance to spin a wheel, maybe get a couple of gifts, couple of T-shirts, some swag. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, Rich.
Got you.
So with that, you ready to sign off?
I'm ready.
All right. Be kind.
Stay steady.
Help someone.
Check in on an old friend. And have a good cup of Joe for us. Take care.
Take care.